All the stars have come in close just to see you, I suppose, and they're a-gleaming. You must be dreaming, and the sun has said goodbye with a twinkle in his eye. He's left the ocean with sweet emotion.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 52 of Little Big Knits. This is a podcast about knitting primarily. My name is Selma. I'm your host, and I'm coming to you from a very hot and sunny Ottawa, where I live with my family and our cat, Yoda. So hello to you, welcome back, and hello to new viewers. If you've joined recently, hello to you, and thanks for coming back to those of you that just keep coming back every time. I'm glad that you appreciate what I have to offer you on this little knitting channel of mine. And just so you know, we have a group on Ravelry called Little Big Knits. And in that group, as well as below, you'll find the show notes. In that group, you'll also find our knit along, the Ranunculus Love Cal, which is a sort of informal knit along for the Ranunculus sweater by Midori Hirose. And you're welcome to come in there and chat and check out what other people are sharing as far as their Ranunculus sweaters goes. Post pictures of a work in progress or a finished Ranunculus. It's just an informal one thread kind of knit along for that particular sweater. So welcome to join the Ravel group as well, if you so please. I'm also known as Selma Knits on both Ravelry and Instagram, in case you happen to be looking for me. And by the way, I forgot to mention that the Ranunculus Love Cal is also being hosted on Instagram with the hashtag Ranunculus Love Cal. And I tend to share in my stories people's finished Ranunculus sweaters. So yeah, please feel free to go in there and tag me or to use the hashtag and I'll find you. So yeah, there you go. From the last episode, couple of things. First, so many people commented about being glad to hear the Barefoot McCoy song back, I Love You Only. And it really was nice to have on there again. I can't promise that it's going to stay, but for now it'll be there. And I've been looking for music. It's actually incredibly difficult to find music that I want to have. And ideally I will have the same piece of music all the time, just because it makes my life in terms of editing a lot easier. I love doing montages at the front end and the back end of the podcast, and I love music to go with that, but to find the music sometimes can take a long time. And I think I've actually happened upon another song that I quite like, so you might hear that at some point. So anyway, I just wanted to make a comment about that. And then also a couple of other things. I had a technical glitch last episode. If you watched it, you'll have known that I sort of came in and interjected because I thought I had lost, I lost a segment. I thought I had only lost the answer to one question, but I realized later on as I was editing that, wait a second, where are my answers about this question, this question, this question? So those questions, there are other questions that also went missing because of my technical glitch. So what I'll do is at the end of the podcast today, I will resume and finish the question and answers from a couple of episodes ago. So there were some fun questions in there about Yoda and my knitting, and Alejandro, my husband, and his knitting, and so forth. So I'll answer those at the end of the episode. And then one thing I forgot last time, I was talking to you a little bit about the qualities of linen, and I'll be sharing a little bit more about that today. Because I have a finished object that's made out of linen. But one thing I forgot to mention before was that sewing in of linen, in particular, cotton I think is a little bit easier for sewing in. Linen can be tricky. And people asked if there were tricks for sewing in ends. And I am going to put down below in the show notes below here in YouTube the name of a podcast. Her name is Mel Makes Stuff. This is Melissa, who used to actually have the Whale Street Yarn Company, and she's a podcaster and has been a podcaster for years. She stopped podcasting for a while, but she does really informative videos. I really enjoy her podcast a lot, and she had one specifically for joining yarns with regards to linen. Different types of methods that one can use depending on the type of linen. So feel free to go and watch that video because I think it's really quite interesting. I tend to be a little bit, I just want to go. I don't want to stop and focus on the ends as I'm knitting. So I haven't used any of the techniques that she suggested. But when I talk about the sweater that I'm wearing, I'll tell you something that I did this time with this type of linen that I think I'll be employing again, because I have had linen unravel from the ends that have been sewn in, and you've cut it so you don't have a whole lot to work with to try and put it back in. It can be very slippery. So I'll tell you what I've done this time, but do feel free to go and watch Mel's video, Mel Makes Stuff. And somebody also asked about pilling. I've never had linen pill at all. I don't know if anybody else has. It would probably depend on how it was treated. I have had some linen cotton blends pill a little bit, and I think that's probably more the cotton that's causing the pilling than the linen itself. But that said, it's not like really horrible pilling. It's really quite minimal, and linen and cotton are a lovely blend together. So that would never stop me from working with them when they are together. And I've made some things that haven't pilled and some things that have. So again, I think it's probably depending on how the fibers are spun and treated rather than the actual fiber itself. So those are a couple of little extra thingies to tell you about linen. And that kind of segues into the sweater that I'm wearing, because I'm wearing my outline tee. I think I was working on this last time. I'd gotten quite far, and here it is. It is a finished garment now. This is the outline tee by Jessie May Designs, and she had started with a tank, which a lot of people have made, which was kind of an oversized tank. And then the moment I saw this, I bought the pattern and found the yarn in my stash and cast it on. And it is finished. I used the Cattialino, which is a 100% plied linen yarn. I showed it you guys last time. And here it is. It's really lovely. We are having an incredibly hot summer. So over a tank, this is actually a really nice thing to wear. It is an oversized, I've got it in this sort of loose tank top that was actually a hand-me-down from my friend Holly. Thank you, Holly, because it's actually perfect. And here it is. It's just a really, really loose-fitting, easy-peasy t-shirt with this super duper wonderful drop stitch feature, which I could see myself having more of in my life. This was a great design. Loved it. The one thing I would say is that it's quite loose up here, so it's the kind of thing that will go all over the place. And I thought if I were to knit it again, I think I would use the same size sweater because I really like the ease of it. And it's meant to have a lot of ease. I think I went with a 48 inches of ease. I think I went with a size 48. So for me, it has about 6 or 8 inches of ease. And I like that. I think it worked out well. It's supposed to be like a loose fitting top like that, right? However, I do find the neckline a little on the big side. She offers the possibility in the pattern of picking up the stitches and then binding off to sort of try and give a little bit of structure to the V, and it didn't do a great job of that. So I think if I were to make this again, I would make the same size because I really, really like it. But I think I would use the V-neck from a smaller size, maybe even a couple of sizes smaller. That's my thought right now, just because I think I would prefer it to be a slightly smaller V for me. I mean, it works with this tank, which is a great V-neck tank, but I have a feeling that, you know, as I wear it, it's going to flop forward, it's going to go backwards, it's going to go all over the place because it's a silky kind of fiber, right? Linen is not going to give you a structured garment, as I've said before, but it will give you a really great cool wearing garment for hot weather. So if you're in a place that gets hot, I know there are people who live in places that are much hotter than here, but our summers are getting hotter and hotter, and this summer has been particularly hot. We all know that we've had some crazy weather in the world globally. Certainly in North America, we've had a lot of wildfires. We've had wildfires in the northern part of Ontario, of our province. And it's an unfortunate reality right now. The heat, the heat is, you know, you could have mixed feelings about the heat, whether it's good or bad, but it is a reality that it is hotter. So having really nice, light garments to wear is really great, and linen is probably the perfect fiber for that. I mentioned to you guys last time that linen can have a tendency to warp, and you will notice that there is a little bit of warping here in the ribbing. Not so much in the actual stockinette, and I do wonder if this drop stitch feature actually helped to kind of reset all the stitches here. But there is a little bit of warping happening in the actual twisted rib of this sweater. And it's another bizarre feature of linen. So something to think in mind. That's why making linen garments that have a little bit of something that breaks it up are likely to sort of put it back into in line, so to speak. And yeah, but I really love this linen, this Cathialino, that comes in so many interesting colors. This was from my stash, but when I went to the store just to see what they had a beautiful kind of indigo blue that I thought this t-shirt would be gorgeous in. I think this would be gorgeous in white, in the original salmon color. So many colors, so many possibilities. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about was how I sewed in the ends. Somewhere, looking for an end to show you, but so this was a plied linen. I remember last time I showed you there are plied linens and then there are sort of chainette linen. So you couldn't do this with the chainette linen, but I think the chainette linen is less likely to shimmy its way out of a sewn in part of it, the sweater anyway. This is just extremely silky. And what I ended up doing was actually, when I came to where the two yarns were hanging and needed to get sewn in, I would actually separate the plies and sew them in separately. And in some cases even not apply together with another ply from the other thread. And I think that is going to be a really good solution for this type of yarn. It creates zero bulk. It creates, I think, much more stability because the yarns are going in different directions rather than using all the plied yarns together to do it. I separated them and sewed in different directions. So it does take perhaps a teeny weeny bit more time because you end up sewing in more ends, but I think that's going to work. And if it doesn't, I'll let you know. And then there's always Mel's video. Mel makes stuff if you're looking. So I think that's what I have to share with you about this beautiful sweater. And I do like the color in the end. I think it's just a very sort of neutral kind of color to wear. Today I happen to be wearing it with a skirt that's kind of a silky I don't know, what would you call this, rayon type of skirt. And, you know, it's something that you could wear with skirts, with dresses, with pants, just about anything. So we'll see if I make another outline tee in the future. I'm certainly not opposed to it. I would go for it. I do have a lot of other plans, so we'll see what happens. So anyway, the outline tee by Jessie May, knit in Catriolino in color number 9, which I think is called beige, but I would call this more of a coffee kind of color. Next work in progress, next finished object is the pair of socks, which was the reversed vanilla socks that I have not sewn in the ends yet. These are the reversed vanilla socks by Anna Fletcher, who is a local designer. These are a toe-up sock, and I shared with you the interesting heel construction last time. Absolutely loved doing that and will do it again for sure. This was great. Great. It's a speckled yarn by Fine Fish Yarns, who is out of Ireland. I believe she still has her shop open, but is not really dyeing anymore, but which is unfortunate, but life takes us in all kinds of ways. But she has had beautiful yarns. So this was a skein of yarn called Manta in her sock base that my friend Kate had brought for me from Ireland when she came to visit the first time, which was 2018, I think. No, I can't even remember anymore. Anyway, so I had this in my stash for a little while, and I made these socks. One thing I noticed this morning as I was putting these socks onto the blockers is that they're not the same height. They are a slightly different height, and I need to decide whether this bothers me or not. I don't think it's going to bother me. I think I'll probably just wear them that way. I'll see what they're like when they're actually on, but it's really not that much, not such a huge difference really. So lovely pattern. This is definitely going to be a pattern that I will use again for socks because the construction is so neat. It fits really, really nicely. And I think it'll work for, not necessarily for self-striping yarns, but I was told that it works really well for gradient yarns, and I have some gradient yarns in my stash acquisition section, which I will share with you a little later. Yeah, I forgot to tell you that at the beginning. I promised you last time that I would share my acquisitions from the last 2 or 3 months, really. And it's a pile of acquisitions. I'm looking at them right there. There are a lot of them. And there's actually one missing because I haven't gone to pick it up yet. So yeah, that's coming up a little later. All right, on to works in progress. I'm trying to figure out which work in progress to start with. I will start with the work in progress that is farthest along, and I don't think I had this as a work in progress last time, but I had swatched a little bit. It is a project that is being held in this bag that my friend Kate of the Hawthorne Cottage Craft podcast had given me years ago. And you may recall, if you have that crazy kind of memory that remembers all kinds of details, that in here I have a Ranunculus number 5, which I am making for a friend of mine, although I'm so in love with it. Of course I'm going to give it to her. She's even tried it on, but I think I want a winter white Ranunculus. So I have actually, it was scrunched up in the bag, so it's all wrinkly. I have finished the body on this Ranunculus, and my friend has tried it on, and it fits lovely. And I have actually just started the sleeves. So I'll be getting on that. But this is the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose, which I am making out of Remix Light, the Barocco Remix Light, which is kind of they call it a DK, and I don't think it's a DK. I think this is more of a sport weight. So this is a combination of nylon, cotton, acrylic, silk, and linen. So I had gotten this yarn thinking that I would make a sweater for myself, but in the end I'm making a sweater for my friend. And this came from the Stash Lounge, which has an online shop out of Alberta, I believe. And then I am double stranding it with Le Petit Silk Mohair by Biche et Bûche in the cream colorway that I got from Farm to Cables, who is here in Ontario, also an online shop, but she has this yarn. So this is what I'm using for this pattern. And I am making the original size. I've talked about this on the podcast. I just do a long tail cast on. I don't do the tubular cast on that is suggested, and I don't do the twisted rib. I just do a regular 1x1 rib, and at the bottom as well, I use, I think, a 5mm needle for the ribbing, and then I go to the suggested 6mm needles for the body. And I still love knitting this pattern. It is such a lovely, easy, and although it's got some unusual techniques, once you get them and just follow the instructions, they're grand. So yeah, it's got a little bit of short row shaping for the front and the back in this sweater, which is also an interesting technique. Usually there's only short row shaping in the back, but I think it helps to create a really nice fitting garment. This just has such a lovely fit across the shoulders, I find. So Ranunculus number 5 is on the way. We've decided that we're going to do 3/4 length sleeves for her with ribbing, not the I-cord that is suggested as the cast off. So the second last Ranunculus I made for myself, the one that was in oatmeal, an oatmeal color, I actually did a 3/4 sleeve with ribbing on that one, and so she's requested the same for this one. So that should be ready sometime in the next couple of weeks to share with her. So this is Ranunculus number 5 as part of the Ranunculus Love Cow. There you go. The next thing, why don't we stay on the sweater theme? I showed this to you last time. This is actually being housed in this beautiful bag by Harrington Bags, who is Claudia Maheu, and this is one of her more summery fabrics that I bought at one point, and I just love her bags, really, and it's huge. Practically all the yarn for the sweater is in here, along with the pattern, the paper pattern, and the whip, and there is oodles of space. So it doesn't seem that big, but it's actually a very large bag inside. And I am knitting the Ellery, which is just coming off my needles. Coming off. What happened to my English? It's just come off the needle. So I think I showed you the swatch last time, and I finally started knitting this last week. It's been a great pattern, but there was something that put me off in the beginning that took me a while to wrap my head around, and then I decided to just simplify things and not complicate my life. So the thing that's complicated about this pattern is that she calls for multiple needle sizes to be used, and I swatched with the recommended needle size, but I found the swatch to be too floppy. Although now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, that looks really nice. That looks really nice. But then when you were supposed to have different needle sizes throughout this. There's actually 2 needle sizes used in the actual yoke. There's another needle size here. There's another needle size for the body. And there were actually 5 or 6 needle sizes, and I just thought, I just can't do that. Like, it's just not going to work. So I've decided to reduce it to 2 needle sizes. And so this was done on a 6.5 millimeter needle. And I decided to, and then the body was going to have to be with a 6 millimeter needle. And I just decided to do the yoke as well as the body in a 6 millimeter needle. And here it is. Now it's a little bit more, I mean, it's still got a lot of give, but it's a more opaque fabric. And I'm just wondering, but it hasn't been blocked, whereas the other one had been blocked. And I do think that probably all the stitches will come out a bit more nicely once it's been blocked, because I'm finding that you don't really see the stitch pattern on the yoke that well. So I decided to use a 6 millimeters for it. And I'm starting to have some slight second thoughts about this, but I think I'll keep on going, or what I might do is actually wet it and see what happens. Put it on a cable and wet it and see what happens is what I think is what I'll do. But this is the Ellery by Elizabeth Dougherty, extremely well explained. It's got an unusual, slip stitch yoke, which is very cool. It's got short row shaping. It's got a lot of different things going. It's a really well written pattern. My only issue is just, I'm like, I can't grapple with all these different needles happening all the time. So I have simplified it, and hopefully rightly so. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to wet it and try it, because I'm just wondering if it's going to end up having the beautiful definition of the stitch pattern, which you can see so nicely here. And it's probably just because it hasn't been wet and blocked that you don't see it that well. This is being made out of Quince & Company Kestrel, and in this beautiful color called Yarrow. And unlike this yarn, this was a chainette. If you watched last time, you'll remember that it's kind of a sort of a knitted yarn. So now that I finally started it, once I decided on my needle sizes, it's been going beautifully. I'm really enjoying it, really enjoying it. And it's linen as well, but because it's going to be a long sleeve sweater, it might take me right into September. And yeah, so I'm hoping to finish that off soon. Next whip, which is in this beautiful bag by Kate of the Hawthorne Cottage Craft, and she had gifted me 2 of these, one for you guys, which will be part of a knit along, and one for me. And I finally chose, I couldn't decide, and then when it went to actually pick one, I decided on these beautiful bees. And in here was a bit of an impulsive cast on, can we say that? I was camping a few weeks ago, and you'll have seen some of that footage at the beginning of the podcast with some friends. And my friend's daughter was there, and it just dawned on me soon, not when I was with them, I think when I came home, I should make her the ripple tee, which is a little, not the ripple tee, but the ripple tank, which is a little tank top, or no, it's the bralette, the ripple bralette by Jessie May Designs. I thought I should really make that for her. And then I just went into my stash, and this color just totally spoke to me. So I have started this. My friend's daughter is a very petite little person who wears just all kinds of things and loves color and whatever. And I had this orange in my stash, and I just thought this would look so amazing on her. So I swatched, and I decided not to make the smallest size, although she probably is the smallest size, but I decided to make the next size up And I have stopped for now because I was just booming along and having a lot of fun knitting on this because I wanted to try it on. I want to be 100% sure this is the right size for her. So I'm hoping to see her at some point this weekend, and if it is the right size, if she loves the color, then I'll be moving ahead with this. I do think she'll love the color. This is totally her color. And yeah, and if it fits, then this will probably be finished in a flash because it is a very small little bralette, and it's just really fun and easy. And I've wanted to make it since the pattern came out. And so I was just happy to finally sort of, the yarn, the person, and the pattern just came together in my mind. This is the Terracotta colorway by Malabrigo. This is the Malabrigo sock yarn. So this was one that I had gotten from the Malabrigo dyeing center in Montevideo in Uruguay the last time I was there. I bought some bright colors just for fun, and this was there and spoke to me. And so I'm so glad to finally be casting it on and making this little bralette in it. So that is work in progress number 3. And the last one is being housed in this lovely bag that my friend Sue of the Tangled Skein podcast, and also a former Etsy shop owner. This is a bag that she made for me at one point, and I just pulled it out for these socks. But I'll talk about Sue again in the near future of the podcast, in the next little while, because she sent me a lovely, lovely package. So this is a bag that she made for me at one point, knowing that I do love birds. I love birds and butterflies and any animal really in nature. So in here is a pair of socks, and I'm very excited to be knitting with this yarn and finally making this pattern. So this is the chaussette, which means sock in French. The chaussette yarn number 3 is the color, by Les Arts Textiles du Témiscouata, which is an indie dyer, yarn dyer in, I'm not actually sure where they are in Quebec. And I ordered this yarn a while ago. I ordered another skein as well that I ordered for the podcast for as a prize at some point. And this is a, do I have the tag? I do not have the tag anymore. It's a 40 merino, 40 something else, and 20% nylon. But the merino, and I think it's BFL, are non-treated. So they're non-superwash. So it's a non-superwash yarn that also has nylon in it. So yeah, and I love the color. It's just beautiful. And I have been wanting to make this pattern since it came out in the 52 Weeks of Socks. I did not buy that book, the 52 Weeks of Socks, but when the individual patterns came out, I bought it, and it is the Linea Socks. And I've only just started, but it looks beautiful. This is the Linea Socks by Minna Sorvala, who is also known as Finfrost on Instagram. And she has some lovely, lovely sock patterns. I think I own 1 or 2 other ones. And I'm just so happy to finally be knitting a pattern by her, as well as using this yarn. And it took me a while to choose which yarn, but I thought that this would be beautiful with it, and I think I'm right. I'll be knitting on these slowly, a little bit here and there. I definitely want to finish the 3 garments that I have, but this is something that I pick up here and there, and despite it having cables on it, it's actually very, very easy pattern, and it just has a really beautiful final outcome, so I'm looking forward to that. So that is my last whip of the day. Alrighty, we are going to go into the acquisitions section. I got my pile of acquisitions, as I said. If it's not your jam, I totally understand. But I thought I would share with you some of the things that have come my way. for the last couple of months, actually. Actually longer than that. I think a couple of things maybe from May. Anyway, June was also my birthday month, and I treated myself a little bit, and I was also treated very kindly for my birthday. So I wanted to share some of that with you too. So I already recorded this, and there's something that's weird happening with my phone, so hopefully won't do it again. This is what happened the last time, where suddenly it just stops recording in the middle of me talking, and it just shuts down. There's no, like, it goes to the home page of my phone, and there's still storage, so I don't know what that's all about, but anyway, hopefully it won't happen again. Let's start. A while back, I bought some nice tuft woolen hand creams from the Grocery Girls. I had mentioned their creams as being much appreciated by my hands because of the eczema that I have. And some of you actually asked, a couple of you asked where I buy them from, and I was buying them from the States, but I have since bought some from the Grocery Girls. The Grocery Girls podcast, I'm sure you know who they are, super duper fun, Jody and Tracy. They have a shop where they sell their pom-poms as well as some yarns and some of their own merchandise, and they also carry Tuft Woolen's products. They have their soaps. I got a couple of little soaps which are not here with me. I bought creams more than once, and also I bought a couple of their, what do you call these, measuring tapes as well. And so these are creams. Some of these will probably end up in a prize at some point, but I really do like their creams. I do find that it is a bit of an expensive cream because I find I use them quite quickly, but it really is, I have to say, a really good cream. And my eczema has, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's cured my eczema, but it really calms it down. So I have to be very particular about the hand creams that I use because there are some hand creams that my hands just do not like. But they really like the Tuft Woolens, and it's a small business catering to knitters, so I thought must help. The other acquisition I want to share with you is one that I actually ordered in March. So that was like 5 months ago. And there's a bit of a weird story around this because the Creative Knitter is located just outside of Ottawa, like literally about 40 kilometers away. And this package took 3 months to get to me. I thought I could have walked there and back in that time quite easily. So I wanted to buy minis because you may recall that I had some wonderful sock tubes produced. And I realized that I didn't have that many minis that were the best, that were the right colors for those. So I was looking for a good set of minis that could be versatile and used for a variety of things, and I found this. I ordered it. A week later I got, or not even a week, a few days later I got a Canada Post alert that the package had been delivered. And I didn't run to the mailbox right away, but I realized a few days later that, hey, wait a second, I haven't seen that package. So I contacted the seller, and she, in the end, you know, after Canada Post said that they had delivered it, there was not a whole lot to do. And so, and she put in a claim with them as well. But she said, look, why don't I just reimburse you? I don't have any more to share with you. I'm like, oh, well, that's really too bad. And I just bothers me that a small dyer is also, you know, kind of in a situation where they're not making the money. But that was very kind of her. And I said, and if it does arrive, I'll let you know and I'll give you the money. So it arrived 3 months later from Crystal Beach, where I think she's located. And it's great. It was exactly what I wanted. I haven't gotten to my sock tubes yet, but I'm hoping to do that this fall as I prepare Christmas presents for people. And I think these will be fabulous. And they arrived, and I contacted her and I sent her the money, and it's all good. But that was not a very happy Canada Post story. And I don't like the fact that they say that something is delivered when it isn't. And that's actually the second time that that's happened this last year. Of course, I've done an awful lot of online shopping, as have many people. So there could be some little glitches in the process. But these are another thing that arrived that I'm supremely happy about. And then as my birthday approached, well, I did some shopping. From Fleece and Harmony, who are located on the east coast of Canada, I bought myself a couple of things. The pretext was actually needles. I needed a set of needles, which I bought, but you got free shipping if you ordered more, and I really wanted a couple of things. One thing that I really wanted were these Knitter's Pride blockers that I kind of thought, why do I not have these? Because they really are handy. I've always used the wire blockers, but I tend to use them for shawls and big items like that need to be blocked. But sometimes a part of a sweater may need to be blocked and not the whole part, or a part of something. And I thought these would be very useful to have. So I ended up buying myself a pair of these, and they're the kind that have, it's almost like a comb. They're blocking combs that you put in. So they're really cool. And then the other thing that I really wanted to have was this beautiful book by Kate Davies, 10 Years in the Making. And actually it was Mel of Mel Makes Stuff. She made this cardigan, and I just thought that is so beautiful. And then when I looked on Ravelry at the book and the patterns in it, I thought, oh my goodness, I absolutely need to have this. And then I think friends and I were talking about the book, and I thought, that's it, I'm buying it. And there are so many beautiful, beautiful sweaters in this book. I'm looking specifically for one that, there's just so many, but I really, really love this sweater. And there are actually so many beautiful books. Her books are always of such a gorgeous quality with such amazing photography. There's a vest here that I really like that has cables. And there are some of her classic patterns, like her, what was it called? The one that was made by a bazillion people. The Carbeth. She has the Carbeth cardigan and the Carbeth sweater in here. So there are some that are previously published and then others that are not. And some that are just lovely, simple designs, like this very nice striped sweater. And then others that are color work and a little bit more complex. There's a beautiful, beautiful cabled, sort of Aran style cabled sweater in here that's lovely. So this was a treat for myself. And then specifically for my birthday, I think I just lost one. I bought myself 6 skeins of the Quince & Company Sparrow, which is a linen that I wanted to try for a long time. I bought myself this yarn from Wabi Sabi, my local yarn store. It's a 100% organic linen. It's got, this is the blue spruce colorway, and it has 168 yards. And it's just such a stunning, stunning, stunning color. I bought this specifically to make the Cumulus. I think that's called the Cumulus by Isabel Kramer. Although there's another pattern that's kind of similar that I also like. I cannot remember right now what it's called, but it's basically a simple tee that has a lace detail across the top. They had one in the shop, and when I saw it, I was like, oh, I need to buy this yarn and I need to make that sweater. So this will probably happen next summer. But yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. So that was a birthday present to me. And then two kind people also gifted me gift certificates for Wabi Sabi for my birthday. Thank you very much. Now I decided that I would wait until the fall to purchase. I most likely will get myself some Let Lopi with those 2 gift certificates because I've been wanting to make a Let Lopi sweater for a while, and I know that they have placed an order. Wabi Sabi has placed an order with the Lopi people, and it hasn't arrived yet. And apparently Lopi is very slow these days. I think I heard another shop talking about the fact that, or somebody talking about the fact that Lopi is they're not able to ship very quickly these days. I'm not quite sure why. So, but thank you for those gift certificates. Another person also very kindly gave me a gift certificate to the Stash Lounge in, I talked about them already. I believe they are in Alberta. And I ended up buying with that gift certificate a sweater quantity of the Katia Cotton Cashmere in this color, which is color 74. This very, very bright, it's coming on screen a little bit more bright than it is in real life. Beautiful, beautiful color. And this is essentially a 90% cotton and 10% cashmere yarn. And I feel like I'm going to be mentioning Mel a lot today. But Mel was, Mel from Mel Makes Stuff podcast. She had made a sweater out of this, and she waxed poetic about the yarn. And somebody else also was talking about it, another podcaster. I can't remember who it was though. And I thought that just sounds like they're talking so highly about this yarn that when I got the gift certificate, I decided to try this out. So, and I also thought that what I wanted to make with this was the Celeste Tea by Sari Nordland. I'm not 100% sure that that's what I'll make, but I do have the pattern, which was also kindly gifted to me. And so I might make this, make that with this yarn. So that was a lovely birthday acquisition as well. Then, as you know from my last episode, if you watch the footage, I went to Montreal and stopped in at Espace Tricot. The yarns I bought there, because I did partake in their lovely goodies, were for specific purposes. So let's go back a little bit. You may recall that I got some lovely yarn, sweater quantity, from Donna of Roots and Rain Yarns. Donna literally lives about 1.5 kilometers from me. She actually lives very close to where my mother used to live, so I actually picked up the yarn from her door. And this is in her Storm Decay base, which is a Corriedale Merino cross, and this was dyed with logwood, which makes this beautiful sort of lavender color. And I know I want to make a colorwork sweater. At the top of my list is the Ingalls sweater by Caitlin Hunter. However, it could also become the Forest Land by Jennifer Steingass. And I have settled on what I want. This will be the main color, but I wanted a sort of dark gray blue to go with this. So in Montreal, I picked up some of this Rauma Finul in the colorway 4006 in this dark gray. Oh, I'm very excited about this. This is so beautiful. And also some Knitting for Olive mohair in the Dusty Violet. That will be the, if I make the Ingalls, then it'll be double stranded for the color work. And that just makes my heart sing. It's so beautiful. So I specifically went into Espace Tricot to buy a yarn for that. I actually brought the yarn with me and then forgot it in the car. So I was going in my mind, kind of going, okay, it's sort of a dusty lavender. And so anyway, these are the two that I got to go with this for a colorwork sweater. And that was my main intention. I also bought the Punch Needle book by Buku for a friend of mine. which I'd given to her. That was part of her birthday present. And then I happened to see this yarn. It's called Lamina Modena, or Modena, which is a lace weight yarn out of 70% wool and 30% cashmere. And it's a very, very fine lace weight. And the reason I bought this is that I have an alpaca yarn that's just about the same color that I want to make a sweater called Dew out of. Dew is a sweater that came out, I do not remember the designer's name, but I'll put it down here. It came out in the last couple of months, and maybe in May, maybe June. And the moment it came out, literally, I just bought it right away. I was like, I'm making that. It's a sort of an oversized cropped sweater, but it has, the detail is here in the shoulders, and I just absolutely loved it. And I decided that I would use this fingering weight alpaca that I have upstairs. But I know that it's not going to be, it's a fingering weight, and it's not a very heavy fingering weight. It's a light fingering weight. And I thought it's not going to be thick enough because that sweater actually calls for a DK yarn. So when I saw this, I thought I'll double strand that with it, which will bulk it up just enough to turn it into the right weight for the Dew sweater. So I'm very, very excited about these two things. The Dew sweater, I will definitely be making this fall for sure. And so you'll be seeing that knit up in that. So I bought enough of that for the Dew sweater. And those are essentially my purchases from Espace Tricot. Sorry, I'm thinking. Another thing I purchased for myself, can we call it a birthday present? Let's just do that. Was one of the Deconstructed Fades by Shirley Bryan Yarns. Another local dyer. She lives here in Ottawa, and this is her Pour Myself a Cup of Ambition colorway. And she had an update, and I was able to snag a skein. So I'm looking forward to actually using the reversed vanilla pattern for this fade as a combination of pattern and yarn, and hopefully that'll get knit up this fall. I'm very excited to use one of her yarns. They knit up so incredibly beautifully. If you don't know her work, you should really check it out. Her color sense is amazing, and just really, really fun. And it's funny because that I find looks weird here in the skein, but when this is knit up, it's just so beautiful. Her work is just so amazing. So I'm really, really happy to have a skein of this and to knit this up soon. And then next were some birthday presents that came my way. My friends Paul and Antoine, who live in Montreal, were very kind and gave me this yarn candy. I cannot think of another word for this but to call it yarn candy. I just feel like this should be framed. It's so incredibly beautiful. This is the Wandering Flock, which is actually a Brooklyn hand dyer, but they bought it in Montreal and at a shop in Montreal. I'm not 100% sure which shop. Not Espace Tricot. I think it's one that is in the Verdun area of the city that carries this yarn. And this was called Lavender Highlights. And it's so incredibly beautiful. Now I went and looked at how it knits up. And what's interesting is that if you knit these up together, when the yellow hits the purple, it'll turn it green. So you can end up with actually multiple colors. So I have to really ponder what to do with this yarn, because it's going to be an unusual, I think it's going to create an unusual pattern. So anyway, at this point, I just really love looking at it. Like, it is seriously so incredibly beautiful, and just, yeah, So thanks to Paul and Antoine for that. Really, really beautiful. And then, out of the blue, a beautiful package came from my friend Dana in Germany. Now, I'm just going to preface this by saying that some people are so incredibly talented. Dana sent me these two enormous skeins of yarn. This one, she spun herself. And it's this beautiful, beautiful green, teal kind of color, just stunning. And I have to say, I've never knit with hand-spun yarn, so it just totally warmed my heart. And then she thought that because I loved mohair, that she would dye up some mohair to go with it. And there is a large amount of yarn here. I don't know where the card went that she sent with it, but there's definitely enough in here for a sweater. So I have to think about what this is going to become. It is not going to become a ranunculus, but I am thinking about some sort of a layering piece. But oh my goodness, they're so incredibly beautiful. So yeah, that was a surprise gift that arrived that really, I was just showing everybody, look, she spun this. And it's so beautifully spun. Just gorgeous. So thank you for that. Another package that arrived, I did a swap with Minna Sorvala, who is the designer of the Linea Socks, actually. She and I we've been chatting for a while, and actually we talked about doing a swap a couple of years ago, and then it didn't happen. And the pretext for this swap was that I wanted to get this pattern, this sewing pattern called the Monday dress. And it's a pattern that is designed by, what are they called again? The Kasaker Hopompom people in Finland. They've got a shop and they have some patterns. And the pattern itself was 12.5 euros. And I was like, okay, fine. But the shipping was 25 euros. And I thought, that is not fine. I am not paying that. So I contacted Minna and I said, look, would you be willing to send me the pattern and do a swap with me? And she was like, yeah. So I sent her a bunch of Canadian yarn and she sent me this pattern. And I actually took it out this last week to start cutting it up. We were at a cottage for a week and I thought, perfect, I'm going to cut up the pattern and the fabric at the cottage. And then I realized that I needed tracing paper for this because the pattern, the two pieces are actually overlapping. So the idea is that you would trace it out, which was a little bit inconvenient for the moment because I wasn't able to cut it out at the cottage. But it means that you can use the pattern for multiple sizes, which is really, really great. I have to say I was really impressed with this pattern so far, except for that one little detail where I was like, oh darn. And then I thought, no, that's actually very practical because usually once you've cut out a pattern, you can't make the larger sizes. But I also love the fact that it's in this large envelope so you can stuff the pattern and the instructions back in. It's just really, really great. So I'm hoping in the next couple of days to actually get this traced and cut. And maybe, if my mojo is working for me, next time I podcast, I'll have a dress. However, I realized that's not around here, but the linen that I got to use for this is a linen I bought a while ago. I had thought about making a tunic, not a dress. So I don't think I have enough to make the full dress, so I'll be making a tunic first go around. But I'm already thinking about buying some more linen and making a couple of dress versions. So I'll see how the tunic version comes out. And then I'm hoping that this is just going to be a really nice, standard, simple fitting dress. Every time I've seen a version on Instagram, I've really liked it. So I'm really happy to have that. And then Minna included some candies, which are of course gone, as well as a lovely tea towel. Which is this gorgeous, gorgeous tea towel. Beautiful, which came with a story actually. So I'm gonna have to read that, of an artist a Finnish artist, so it's basically her work on a tea towel. And then she sent me by Louhittaren Luola. Louhittaren Luola is a yarn dyer in Finland. She sent these two lovely skeins, which are just beautiful. And I'm going to have to think. This is called Laguni, and this one's called Ilmatar, the bottom one. So very excited to have some Finnish yarn. I've never had hand-dyed Finnish yarn, I don't think. I've had commercial yarns from Finland, but not hand-dyed, so that's very exciting. So thank you, Minna. And the last, I think this is the last thing I have to share with you, was a surprise gift that came from my friend Sue, also known as Crafty Knitter 7. So Sue has got a sock cranking machine and sent me this sock tube, which is really cool. And I've tried it on, it fits, so I will be making some socks out of this as well. And she sent some markers, some bag of stitch markers, as well as a progress keeper, and some minis, which could very likely go with this. So that's really cool. So I've got myself a project for socks there. But she also sent 2 bags, and I'm going to be keeping one of them, I think probably this one, and keeping this one as a prize for the podcast. It says Unwind on there. And one thing about Sue, as you know, she's made a lot of bags, and I have many of her bags because she's been very generous over the years and always made me bags. She used to have a shop, and she's actually reopening her Etsy shop, I believe the 29th of August, called the Tangle Skein CA. So look out for that because her bags are really lovely. These are like little sock, almost like a basket, like you can fold it down and put your skein of yarn inside and just have it sitting beside you. They're really great. And this is her sock size. And yeah, they're just really, really, really lovely. So she's opening up her shop again. She's gotten her sewing mojo back, which is awesome. So thank you so much for that too, Sue. Oh my gosh, was that enough acquisitions? I think so. The last thing I wanted to share with you, I think I may have mentioned that I took the punch needle workshop with Buku through Espace Tricot. I did that. That was in early July. I didn't finish my piece, but this was really, I just love learning new crafts. Now, where in the world did the ball band go for this yarn? I have a mess beside me. We used this yarn, which is an alpaca wool blend for this, for the punch needle. But this was great. Joined the workshop. They sent a box in the mail with 5 skeins of yarn, a chunky yarn, as well as the monk's cloth, as well as this very nice, very sturdy loop, the punch needle tool, of course, and I think a couple of other little items that you needed, some clippers, and then you just joined the workshop online on Zoom, and it was really, really great. This technique is actually so easy, and really, really interesting. I decided not to finish this because it was just a good learning for me, but I didn't quite know what I would do with it, and so I've decided not to complete the whole thing. But I've been thinking a little bit about what to do with punch needle technique because it really is neat. I think it could be used for so many things, and Aruna's punch needle book, which I got at Espace Tricot for my friend who was also doing the workshop, Just has some really, really fabulous ideas. And because it's so stylized, you can really quite easily make your own design and not have to use the design of other people. So yeah, so I didn't finish it, but I really, really enjoyed doing it. And I just think it's got some really, really fun potential for future crafts. So let's see where this takes me. In the meantime, like I've got tons of the different colors left, so they may get used for something in punch needle or something else. We'll have to see. But yeah, that was really, really fun workshop. Highly recommend these workshops. Okay, so that was a lot of acquisitions. Yeah, I think I won't be buying yarn for a while. Actually, that being said, I have one more yarn to show you, but I don't have it. And it's also a yarn that I ordered a while back. So I'll probably have it by the next time I podcast, and I'll show you then. I think this is getting to a situation where there's yarn everywhere in the house. Luckily, my family doesn't complain, but there does feel like there's a lot of yarn in this house. I have my yarn closet, and then there's yarn around the house. Anyway, thank you for humoring me with that. I think I'll just end this podcast with answering the last few questions that got lost last time, because there were lots of great questions and I didn't want to miss out on them. So if you're here for that, awesome. So one of the questions that I was asked is, do I stick to a yarn budget? Well, do I have a knitting yarn budget, and do I stick to it? And I think the answer is no. I think it's pretty clear that I don't. I don't tend to have a budget. I probably should have one at this point, because I really do think that I have more yarn than I'll ever be able to knit. But as some people say, yarn buying is another hobby. Knitting is one hobby, and yarn accumulation is another one. Yarn is so beautiful. It really is so beautiful, just as fabrics are and textiles. So I do think that it feeds another part of you. But yeah, I don't have a yarn budget. The next question was, does Yoda get into my knitting? Yoda is our cat, in case you don't know. She shows up occasionally. I have no idea where she is right now. She does not get into my knitting, actually. She does not demonstrate a whole lot of interest for yarn. Our previous cat, Suko, who died, when was that? 3 years ago or 4 years ago, in 2017, I think it was. She, at 18, she wasn't never really interested in my yarn either. So I don't know why. I think there was one time that Yoda ran away with a ball of yarn, and we all laughed and retrieved it, and that was the end of it. It just isn't something that seems to happen. I don't know if when the cats were kittens, they got reproached enough that they just thought, not going near there, or they had other interests. I don't know. But no, she's not interested in my yarn. Another question I was asked was, how is Alejandro's knitting? So you've asked that question because you've been around for a while. There was a time where my husband used to knit. I taught him to knit at one point because he wanted to learn, and he made some, he made a cowl for his nephew, he made a scarf for our son, he made some decorative pieces for his office, and then he started a sock. I showed him how to, actually we knit a pair of socks together. I did the complicated stuff and he did the body, and then the next time he wanted to learn how to do it all. And then he just kind of lost interest. And that was the end of that. I guess that need for a smaller motor activity was just not there anymore. He's got a lot of other interests himself, so he just didn't continue knitting. So how's his knitting? It's not. I guess that's the answer. Another question I was asked was, what is a favorite Workhorse yarn? That's hard for me to say. I'm not very good at choosing favorites. I can tell you the one that comes to mind immediately, and I would say that that's Cascade 220 actually. The items that I've made, I think I've used it on 3 or 4 sweaters, and they've always looked great. Very little pilling. It just keeps a beautiful stitch definition. It wears really well. It's a really good workhorse yarn. I can't think of any other sweater yarn off the top of my head that I would consider a workhorse yarn. Cascade's also a really reasonable price point, and it comes in a great selection of colors. So I don't like their superwash yarn. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. That is a yarn that I probably would never use again. I found that it's stretched a lot, and I've never used another superwash yarn that has done that before. So I would not use their superwash yarn, but their 220 heathers and the solid colors, I consider that to be really good yarn. I've worked with other yarns too that I've really adored, but I can't think of them right now. But I would say that that's a really good workhorse yarn with a good price point. Next question. I think I may have come to that last question. Oh, I think I was asked a question about my favorite knitting festivals and how do I feel at knitting festivals if I get overwhelmed. How do I feel at knitting festivals? Do I get overwhelmed, overstimulated? Yeah, definitely. Now I'm an extrovert, not hardcore extrovert, but I'm definitely an extrovert, and so I may have a higher tolerance than an introverted person does, but a big festival like Rhinebeck is overwhelming. I think everybody will tell you that it's overwhelming, and I rarely buy yarn on the first day because it's so overwhelming, and there's so many people and so many things to see that it's usually the next day that I'm able to do that. The first day, there's just so much to take in, and I think that we're usually quite exhausted in the evening of the first day and just quiet and needing to recuperate. Smaller yarn festivals are less overwhelming, and they are, you know what, often equally wonderful. I'm thinking one of the last knitting festivals I went to, which was the Prince Edward County Festival, was just so nice to walk around and see, local makers and so forth. So if you're the kind of person who's likely to get overwhelmed, I'd say go to smaller yarn festivals, and then gird your loins for Rhinebeck. And I think that brings me to the last of the questions. I hope it does bring me to the last of the questions and that I got them all. And thank you for all the questions again. And I think that's it. And I think that brings us to the end of the podcast. I will keep books for next time again, just because I'm conscious of this becoming a rather long podcast, and my family's also walking around and trying to get life going. So I'll leave it there for today. And I'll see you probably sometime in September. In the meantime, I'll have left you with some footage from our camping trip, and perhaps a little bit of the cottage and some flowers from the season. And I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Malena canta el tango como ninguna, y en cada verso pone su corazón. A Yuyu del suburbio su voz perfuma. Malena tiene pena de bandoneón. Tal vez allá en la infancia su voz de alondra tomó ese tono oscuro de callejón. ¿O acaso aquel romance que solo nombra cuando se pone triste con el alcohol? Malena canta el tango con voz de sombra, tiene pena de bandoneón. Tu canción tiene el frío del último encuentro. Tu canción se hace amarga en la sal del recuerdo. Yo no sé si tu voz es la flor de una pena. Solo sé que al rumor de tus tangos, Malena, te siento más buena que yo.